Maybe I would like to touch the elephant in the room first, because to most of the people, when you speak about drones, probably the first brand will come like DJI. Okay,
Yep.
we know what's happening in the United States. I think we can look at it from two different angles. One is like legal stuff around it, and the second is like, what do you think is happening on the background? So maybe if you can just walk us a bit through like what's happening there, like in legal way.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach towards it. Some may take it as a bit controversial, but I think it's more of a logical approach. Where, look, I understand why certain industries or certain companies are pushing forth certain legislation to block or restrict or just make it a little bit more difficult for our foreign competitors to compete within our own market. Now, am I for that? Not necessarily, right? Because we're basically grown on like a capitalist market, right? We like to have a fair and open trade. However, when it comes to, we'll call it the critical infrastructure, military, and really anything that has to do at a high government level, and I'm not talking about doing just basic mapping of streets and anything. I'm talking about things that have to do with saving human lives, doing short range reconnaissance, doing any military operations. We should not be dependent on a foreign entity or a foreign company's components to be alongside with us. Are they a bit more superior in terms of the capabilities? Yeah, absolutely. Are they a bit more cost effective? Actually, a whole lot more cost effective. But when it comes to my industry, with the commercial and industrial side, it does make it a bit of a challenge for us to do that. And over the last, we'll call it 2 years, there's been a lot of change, and there's a big piece of legislation that, or basically a big bill that just got pushed through on the FCC side back in December that quote unquote bans DJI, right? This is the main brand in the drone industry. I mean, they control about 85% of the global markets when you think about a consumer or an enterprise drone. But then when you think about the military side and the private sectors, right, there's a whole lot of other competitors in that space. And DJI is still very dominant in that, not just in the United States, but globally.
Mm.
So a lot of that has been a fight towards bringing a lot of, well, one, manufacturing back to the United States, which I think is good. It's a good thing for us to do that. It creates more jobs, it creates more opportunities for people to get into robotics and really the manufacturing side of the industry, right? That was something that we were so proud of when we were manufacturing our own vehicles. And we're trying to get back towards that with all of these new AI data centers, even though that's not manufacturing. There's a lot more manufacturing that's coming onto the tech side. So that's one side of it. The other side is, well, what about us, right? What about people like you and me that don't care about that or don't even operate in that regard? It puts us into a very tricky position. And as it stands right now, you still are legally able to purchase a DJI system as long as it has its FCC certification and fly it on projects. I'm sitting on over $300,000 or $400,000 worth of DJI equipment here that I am using weekly with my clients, and it's 100% legal to do. However, we're starting to face some of these restrictions coming into play where I am now having to outsource or even source specific US components or companies here in the US that have built US drones or US sensors to go and complete some of these projects. And that creates a huge price barrier. And in some cases, it's a 4 to 5x price barrier. So I know I'm going a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm kind of explaining how all of these things work on the back end, right? Because on the front end, you see all of these articles, whether it's on LinkedIn or a news article, DJI drones or Chinese drones banned from the United States. It's illegal to fly. And there's a lot of misinformation that exists. I get hundreds of comments every single day across all of my content saying, oh, well, you're flying something illegal. You can't do this. You can't do that. When in reality, there is a legal path that still exists
If
that
I,
you're
if
going
I
to abide
understand
by it.
right, the FCC certification is about the new technology incoming, right?
Yeah.
So like the
Yeah.
current drones and current
They're fine. They're totally fine.
approved, you can fly them, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's all it is. It's a licensed certification for the radio signals, so the radio waves to work between the controller and the drone. That's all that it really comes down to. It has nothing to do with any of the other components on it, even though they are extending it towards that, which I don't think is right, but that's just kind of the
Is
state that we're in.
is there a difference between commercially used drones, so probably like the division of DJI Enterprise compared to the consumer drones, or
For the FCC licensing,
yeah,
no, it's just a blanket, right? So DJI as an entity as a whole, whatever their FCC licenses that are currently standing, whether it's something like a DJI Mini or all the way up to a DJI M400,
hmm
they all have to go through the same certification process.
hmm
So that there is no difference between the two. Obviously, the difference is a $1,000 drone and a $10,000 drone, but it's really a price factor in that sense.
Is there currently a drone from DJI that you already think that would be good to have and is not approved in United States?
Well, currently everything that's come out from DJI is approved here. Even the new Avata 360, you can purchase it here and legally fly it, as far as I know. But if there are any new DJI drones that are coming out, which we know that there are, because they're just like Apple, they have something new every single year, or at least 4 new things every single
Yeah.
year. Um, there's things in the pipeline. Right now, it's uncertain, right? There are current certifications that exist for drones that haven't come out yet. So, a lot of people are banking on the fact that, all right, well, those certifications are going to be applied towards these new drones for the next 2 or 3 years. But
hmm
again, we don't know that.
I have seen also some discussions or like conspiracy about Sky. Oh, was Skydio, Skydio company doing some shit behind it and just lobbying against the DJI. Do you think it's really possible? Because I think that the DJI is too big. Like they can pay whatever and deal with whoever. I think all
Yeah.
over the world. So
I'm going to try to not sound like a politician here, because I've got friends all throughout the industry. And, a lot of them are in certain positions that kind of bring unfortunate attention. I think indirectly, there have been things that Skydio has done that a lot of the commercial industry is just not fond of. Um, whether it is backing a bill or paying a lobbyist, right? But I actually made an entire video about this that I posted back in November. It's about a 3 hours and 45 minute, we'll call it a documentary, that goes kind of behind the scenes and looks at all of the US drone manufacturers that exist. But I also have right in the beginning of the video, I talk about what things are and really who the proponents are. I also made a second video talking about the whole DJI ban that goes a little bit more in depth about how and who and what and where the money has been flowing. And in fact, DJI has actually put in way more money than Skydio in the lobbying efforts. So if people want to play the finger pointing game at, oh, well, they spent this amount of money, well, guess what? So has everybody else. That's just the game that is played on the global economics when it comes to companies that are manufacturing goods and even services, especially in the tech industry. So
mm,
kind of yes and no. Skydio, I wouldn't say is the ultimate or the only company to quote unquote point a finger at that has put efforts or at least money towards making it difficult for DJI to operate here with the United States. There's a ton of other companies that have also done the same.
mm, mm.
Now,
Uh,
it's
eh,
it's not as easy
yeah.
as it seems on paper.
In the beginning, you mentioned like the approach or the point of view from the case of the defense and let's say the ability to not rely on a foreign entity and foreign technology, right? So do you think that especially with what we can see all around the world with wars and everything else, do you think that especially now this should be like a primary line of how to look at this and just do it no matter what? Because like if us just ban DJI drones at all, it will probably move prices up. Technology for a few years maybe a little bit down. So how do you see the approach here?
Well, here's the thing. If for whatever reason the US decides today, DJI drones, no longer. We're pulling all FCC licenses. We're doing all that. It will single-handedly collapse the entire drone industry in the United States. And the way that I actually explain the drone industry, we're not a primary industry. We're a sub-industry of many primary industries, right? We're just a tool. That's all we are. But in the, not efforts, but in the conversation about war, right? War is something that is unavoidable, regardless of where in the world you are. And it's not an area that I, particularly enjoy talking about, but it's also one of the biggest factors in innovation. If you look at the decades of war that has happened and the tools that have come out of it, I mean, GPS is one of them, right? So that's one side of it. There's always going to be constant innovation towards it. But when we're talking about using foreign companies' systems for your own efforts, that gets a little bit of a sensitive topic. It would be like US purchasing a bunch of, we'll call it Russian drones to use for our own efforts. That would not make any sense at all. Or China
But is it
buying a bunch of stuff from us
is it the
to do that.
same? Because like I don't think that like at least like openly there is a very different approach to China and to Russia, right?
Of
From
course.
United States. So
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that it just has to do with the diplomatic relationships that they have, and the decades and centuries of
but
things that
you
happen.
think on the background it's all the same, yeah?
To simply put it, yes. I mean, but it goes much deeper than that, and honestly, I don't even think we'd have enough time to really cover all of that.
Don't worry.
That's all like a whole political conversation that can happen in a more friendly conversation. But it's things that you and I would never have any say or control over,
Of
right?
course, of
These are
course.
people at the absolute top of every single country. These are the ones who make the decisions on that, not us. We're just the pawns in on the board. We just move whenever we're told to move.
I would like to know how you came to the drone industry. How did you start? What's your background?
It's funny. I was just having this conversation literally the other day with actually a police officer who is now using drones for their own efforts. And I actually started in video production. My whole background comes from video production, shooting music videos, TV shows, doing a bunch of directing. And I was using a drone at the time as just another video camera, just one that flies. And honestly, did that for a few years. Had an opportunity that fell into my lap to do something with commercial real estate, where there is a brand new warehouse that was being built. And they wanted to see a unique way of presenting it for obviously the parties that were invested in it, the brokerage firms, the investment firms, all these different companies that are part of a project like that, have hundreds of millions of dollars invested. They want to know where their money's going. And so I asked the company, I said, hey, have you guys ever seen a drone scan before? And they sat there and they're like, no, we've actually never seen that before, because they're so used to people just flying drones, capturing photos and videos, and then just sending it on a Dropbox or throwing it on YouTube. I also hadn't seen a drone scan before either, that moment when I asked them. And so that day I went back home and I got a trial of Drone Deploy back when Drone Deploy was very cheap, and went and scanned my parents' house about 17 times that day just to make sure I got it done right. Went out to their property the next day, scanned it a few times, and then went and did a full presentation at their office at the end of the week. And by the end of the presentation, the entire office was in that boardroom, and people's jaws were on the floor. The light bulbs were going. Everything was happening all in the right aspect. They're like, hey, can you zoom into that spot? Hey, can you do a volume calculation of that dirt stockpile over there? Oh, hey, look, that's Tim's tools in the back of his truck. Like, that's going to get stolen. Like conversations like that. But then people
Yeah.
started realizing, oh, wait, there's actually a lot more benefit to this 2D map and really 3D model that they were looking at. A lot more insight into their project and where the money was going. And in fact, that moment, I secured a contract right on the spot.
There, I want to stop you because I was especially wondering about that. We are in a very sexy industry, so like the fact that everybody was like drooling and like staying in awe and just watching at what you're showing, it's quite common situation in presentations, okay? Because whether
Yeah.
it's laser scanning, photogrammetry, whether it's drone scanning and everything else, uh, because people are not used to be looking at 3D models of their like buildings or
Right.
lines and whatever. But I wanted to ask, especially that, like after that, were they able to purchase something to lock you for some jobs, or they just stayed like, yeah, it's very nice, but what should we do with this, and who will pay for this?
No, they on the spot, they realized that there's a value to it because they were able to not have to send any of their team out there or rely on project managers to update them on where the progress was of this project. I mean, this was a $5.5 million project that they were invested in, and
Mhm.
they were responsible for all $5.5 million that were invested on this project. And so that has to do with every component of the project. By doing that for them, they were traditionally relying on just some photos and some videos. I'm like, okay, well, that looks good. But that was it. It just looks good. There was no actionable data off of it. It actually wasn't until 3 months later that we had started that contract that they really saw the full value of it. Where the owner of the company, he said, "Hey, Dylan, can you go and look at the bottle and can you give me a volume calculation of that one stockpile on this specific part?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Took me 30 seconds, sent him the report. I get an email later that day, said, "You just saved me $60,000 from that." I said, "How so?" He said, "Well, found out that the contractor was lying about the material, the volume of dirt that was on site. And in fact, we went and looked back at some of the videos and saw that they were sending the dirt off to another contractor. That $12,500 contract that I locked in right there saved them $60,000. It paid for the entire program forever, pretty much,
Mhm.
because I still do work with this client 7 years later, which is crazy. Like, that was the moment that they realized, "Hey, this is actually a very valuable asset." Not just the asset that they were building, but also the data that I was providing to them, and it expanded beyond there too. I mean, they mostly care about, uh, dirt volumes for all of their sites, but that right there was the pivotal moment that I realized, "Oh, wait, there's actually a lot more utility with drones than just taking pretty photos and videos." So that was really my start.
I think that these volume measurements of the dirt on construction sites, this is pretty common use case, because this is happening almost everywhere. That
Yeah,
they are either not able to calculate them accurately, or they don't want to calculate them accurately, as you mentioned, right?
exactly. Yep.
But especially in my region, I have seen one more situation. It was the first two, and in addition, the construction manager was the one that didn't actually want to know the truth, because he was involved in that. So you don't have a partner for this. Okay, so there is nobody to check accurately whether this is okay or not. So the subcontractor and the site manager were going like together on it, and there is nobody to check this accurately. Crazy shit. But it happens.
It happens, literally in every continent. Like, there is no, well, maybe not Antarctica, they don't have dirt out there, but but no, that as simple as it is, just being able to track material. I mean, there's this whole saying that the dirt work is a dirty industry, and it really is, because you've got contractors that have been doing the same old method of, "Yeah, it looks good to me," and they just measure with their thumb and call it a day. Um, where in reality, they could have been losing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on miscalculated material. And with the rapid pace that we are starting to build nowadays in terms of scaling, at least here in the United States, we are building a lot of data centers, and there are companies paying hundreds of, honestly, billions of dollars right now. Uh, a lot of money is being invested into developing warehouses. And a warehouse is basically just one big flat building. So they need to move a lot of dirt to make the building as flat as possible for the foundation. But yeah, like, as simple as it is, that right there was the pivotal moment in me getting into the commercial drone industry. And from there, kind of, I would say the rest is history, even though I've got a lot that has led me up to the conversation that we're having here today. But if it wasn't for that opportunity, then I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
But it's very interesting, and like Scott is just saying that yeah, he's just confirming that any like case that can demonstrate a quantifiable ROI is a win for industry. And it's funny because it's not only easily quantifiable, but it's also a long hanging fruit, because you can be almost certain that this is happening on every side,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
So
ROI doesn't have to necessarily be measured by dollar amounts either. There's many ways to measure ROI. Is there a time savings? Which, yes, directly that also correlates towards saving money. Are you taking a human life out of a very unpredictable situation and putting a robot in place, right? That is a huge ROI. There's no amount of money that you could place on a human life, right? So there are multiple different factors. At the end of the day, if you are solving even the simplest of problems, and take drones out of it, just with 3D data collection that we do, whether it's terrestrial, whether it's under the surface of the water, or whether it's geospatial, someone is going to be able to pull and extract some kind of value out of it. You just have to understand what that value is to them, right? What problem is it solving for them? And then there's practically endless opportunities and things that you can do with
mhm.
drones, with 3D scanners, with USVs, like so many different things that you can do.
Can you just for a second travel in your mind back to the times when you realized that drone can, or it's not only about the photos, images, and videos, but you can actually like recreate a 3D model, something like. When was your first realization, and how did you feel about it?
It was that actual project that I did for that client that won me the $12,500. I
But
thought
but
it was the
but
coolest thing in the world.
you must have heard about the
Oh,
digitization before, right? So
yes, through YouTube, funny enough, the platform that I love and obviously that I'm on now. I had seen a demo. Um, I I don't know where or why it popped up, but I mean, YouTube works in mysterious ways. It just wanted me to see drone deploy being done. Of, hey, you can take a drone up and do a 3D scan and create your own model. I was like, "Ah, that's cool." But that actually had sat in my mind for 2 years until I actually went forward with doing a trial and going out and providing this deliverable to the client. Granted, I didn't know what kind of deliverable I was doing. This was 19-year-olds. I was 19 when I did this for the client, so I didn't really understand the industry to the extent that I understand it now. Um, but it was that moment that I saw, and then 2 years later, I was like, "Oh, let me just try this out." That was a very pivotal moment for me.
how long after this like first project, how long have you still been doing the like pictures and videos, or did you just cut off the old business and stayed with 3D models?
I still dabble in it from time to time. I mean, I transitioned a lot of it into the YouTube that I have now. I mean, I'm in this studio that I've built out, something that I've actually dreamed of doing back when I was first doing the photos and videos. I mean, I had a cheap $500 camera and, a $1,000 drone, and I thought I was the coolest thing on the block. But, now fast forward 7, 8 years now, um, I still leverage a lot of, my knowledge from then, my expertise in doing the photography and videography, and it has actually allowed me to build my own personal brand, which is obviously myself, and then my company Pilotbyte. So I still technically use it just for my own efforts now, not for other
Mhm.
people's.
I'm wondering about one thing, Dylan. You moved from doing pictures and videos into doing full 3D models. I'm getting quite often, and like disturbingly too often, this question. Like my cousin has a drone. Can he do the 3D models?
Yes and no. It depends. If you look at how 3D modeling was done back in the day, which this is actually something that I teach, we didn't have all these tools of using RTK and ground control points. We used a lot of photos, stitch them together to, in a sense, photogrammetry to create and render these high resolution, very dense mesh maps and models. But you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to do it. Literally, I can do it with this little drone that I have right here. So yes, you can absolutely create a 3D model with it. There's a lot of effort that's involved in doing it, but doesn't mean you can't do it.
The problem is that my question is not aiming to whether you can do it with the like retail store drone or the smallest drone or whatever. The problem is that the question is usually about, we need to scan this building or we need to scan this site.
I see what you're saying.
My cousin has a drone. Can he do it tomorrow? And that's very different question to what you were answering.
That's a very different question. Yes. That's funny because there's a lot that people don't know in terms of what they are asking for. It's like I get a client that asks, "Hey, can you go and do a scan for me?" Okay. What are you doing with that scan? Right? What are you trying to extract? What value are you trying to get out of that scan? Are you just trying to look at it like a pretty model? Cool, that's easy. I'll use this to go do that for you. Or are you trying to do real world measurements? Like, is this centimeter accurate? Do I need to tie it to control that you have on site? That completely changes the way that I'm going to pitch the service or the way that I'm going to collect the data and provide them a deliverable. Because a model is not just a model. A model can be just a model, but a model can also have a lot more intrinsics behind it, a lot more data behind it. And it's really up to the end client or what the end client's expectations are of what they're going to be able to do with that model. And I think there's a big misrepresentation in terms of the accuracy. And I'm going to vouch for my surveyor friends here. Yes, it is too easy nowadays to just go pick up. Literally, I keep pointing to this, but you can literally pick this up, and there's people that are going to go out and say, "Oh, I can do a point cloud with my Mini 3." Technically, yes, you can, but how accurate is it, right? What are you trying to do with that? And I totally understand the frustration on their part, and I'm with them on that, because if you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to set yourself up, one, for failure, but also put a bad taste in the client's mouth. That way, when an actual professional comes into the position to say, "Hey, I can actually do a scan for you," they're gonna be like, "No, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I've already spent thousands of dollars on it, and I was disappointed." And it was because of someone not fully understanding what it is that they're providing or what they can't provide with the tools that they have, I guess, at their disposal.
My response to that is very, very often like it's like comparing ice hockey to figure skating. Like, yeah, you both have ice and skates, but it's
Yep.
like totally different sports, and it actually goes the other way around. Just because I'm able to create like a perfect 3D model of a building, that does not mean I'm able to shoot a wedding, for example, with the drone or some cinematic pictures, right? So it's going the both ways, and it's not about like diminishing the capabilities of those that are doing just pictures and videos.
No,
People
not at
simply
all.
need to understand that these are different sports.
And different applications, right? You can either use a hammer to build a house or a hammer to smash your hand in, right? It's
Yeah.
still a hammer at the end of the day. But if you don't understand, the full capabilities or what it can't do, then that's going to put you in a position of, not being able to provide what it is that you think you're providing to your client. Now, look, we all start from a place of ignorance in a sense, right? You don't know what you don't know, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn. I've spent over 12 years in not just flying drones, but learning about industries, learning about how to use these tools. The first 4 years, I was using it as a cinematography tool, and uh, but then also have that transition for the last 10 years that I've been doing this in a commercial sense. So I've been able to slowly and gradually graduate to that next step, that next evolution of understanding what the tools and capabilities are, to the point where now I'm working with engineering and surveying firms, not just all over the US, but all over the world, to help them implement the technology. Sure, I'm not a surveyor. Sure, I'm not an engineer, but I also know enough, and I've worked with a lot of my colleagues in the space to understand where their frustrations lie in the technology and how to also re-educate them on their actual capabilities and the nuances behind the tech, so that they can actually leverage it to the extent that they need to leverage it to, and not listen to a sales pitch or somebody that just picked it up off the street and said, "Oh, I can go do this for half price." Like, no, there's a lot that goes into understanding the tools.
I would like to dig deeper into this because you mentioned that you are not a surveyor. Me neither. I'm not a surveyor as well, and we are doing like scan to beam projects and laser scanning and photogrammetry on objects. Still delivering valuable assets, survey grade assets, but we are not surveyors by education and by the profession. You just muted yourself, Dylan. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you tackle the question when you come to a new client that doesn't know you, or just very briefly, and he asks you, "Oh, so you're a surveying company, right?" So how do you tackle
Yeah.
this question?
No, I'm very explicit in that. And I'm also very explicit with my students too. Of look, if you're operating with the United States, because I know what the rules, regulations are here, and also the fines that exist here if you misrepresent yourself or misrepresent your data. I'm explicit in how I pitch and sell my services. I never use the word survey grade. Now, if a client's going to come to me and say, "Hey, I need a survey grade this," I'm like, "Look, I can't provide that, but I can provide you an accurate model for your reference only," right? Keywords, your reference only. And I also have a bunch of context that I provide in the contracts and a bunch of disclaimers, letting them know that if they want to use this for survey purposes, they can't.
Or in front of the jury, or
Yep. If there's any
whatever.
legally binding
Yeah.
document that goes with it, I'm like, I can't provide that. Now, with my established relationships that I do have in the space, I can go to a handful of my surveying buddies, have them do the bid for me, and I'll be a subcontractor for them. Now, would it be smarter for me to go and get my PLS, my professional license or surveying license? Then maybe, but I don't want to go back through school for that. And I'd rather just leverage my relationships for that. But also, not every single project needs survey grade quality.
That's what I wanted to touch. Like, we are like right now we are not discussing how to do this without the education or without the license. We are just trying to explain that there is a plenty of jobs that does not need the
No,
education
you don't need
and the
millimeter
license.
accuracy, you don't need to
Exactly.
tie it to
Exactly.
control. Maybe they just need a reference, right? If you're just scanning dirt, do you really need to have 1 centimeter accuracy on dirt? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because there's no surveyor that's gonna go out there and get you 1 centimeter of accuracy
So far they were having the
in a
error
cost-effective way.
of several trucks, so it doesn't really matter whether you are
Exactly, and
sending it
I'm
or
not trying to, downplay a surveyor's role because they are still a very valuable asset in the world of the construction, and not just construction, just everything that has to do with land and building. But you don't always need a surveyor, or you don't always need to provide survey grade or survey quality deliverables to a client for everything.
yeah, yeah.
And I firmly stand behind that, and I know a lot of my surveying friends will also say the exact same thing too.
And the trend is there. I think like most of the people that are coming into reality capturing and creating 3D models or mapping, they usually are not coming from surveying companies.
No, no, they're not. They're coming from other industries that they're looking for a career change, or they're looking to add another service or a tool to their uh, to their tool bag and provide that as a service to a client, like
Do,
architects.
do you have any idea why like typical surveyors which are on a market, let's say 15, 20 years, why they are not like eager to learn something new and to go into this new technology and just staying with the old GNSS stakes? And
Well, understanding the cost of
all the
this.
surveyors are going to hate me right now, but I just wanted to ask you.
No, no, actually, I think it's a very valid question, but if you've looked at where they've had to come from, right? Say 15, 20 years ago, GPS was new for them. Using the GNSS receiver, they were like, that thing's never going to catch on. We're just going to use our tried and true method of using a laser. Then they saw, the capabilities of a GNSS. Sure, it's not going to be, well, maybe nowadays, but back then it was nowhere near as accurate as some of the tools that existed. But it also allowed them to produce faster results because they're able to collect data faster, right? And that's what we're in right now. We're in this race to get more data, more data, more data, faster, more accurate, right? But not everything needs to be that millimeter accurate for every single project. And I think there's kind of two parties, right? There are those that are willing to adapt and get onto the bleeding edge. And then there are those that are like, we're good. We'll just subcontract somebody out. But then you also have to look at the cost of the equipment. Some of those total stations are $50,000, $60,000, and they're expected to continuously keep paying for that. Meanwhile, the cost of surveying jobs are going down. That's a hard ask on their part. Maybe we're to blame because we're using all these new cool tools and quote unquote cutting them out, but we're not cutting them out. We're just doing something that doesn't necessarily require the tolerances that surveying deliverables, have to abide by.
We have interesting intake from AG Creek, and he is actually very right. But he's just saying that after the rain day or the measurement is no longer accurate. But I actually think that this is to confirm the importance of measuring with drone or with whatever, because the dirt, that's true, is changing all the time on the soil, on the construction site.
Yeah.
It's one thing that it's changing the volume because of the time, because it's settling down. Then it's the rain, then it's whatever, right? But you can remeasure it again and again, just to be sure.
My counter is that, are you going to go walk out there with your GNSS and do measurements on that stockpile while it's raining or after it's raining? No, you're not, because it's just going to take you a whole lot longer. When we're talking about these tools, and this is actually how I measure it, it's the level of effort to get that data, right? What is that level of effort? Are you really going to go out there and map traditionally all of these stockpiles? Actually, I've got a great example. This was about 4 years ago. I was on a 300-acre project. They were redeveloping the entire thing. It used to be an old mall, and they were redeveloping it into a mixed-use commercial industrial site, whatever. It was $17 million worth of just dirt work. And in total, I think there is a good 95 stockpiles of material all over that site. I flew the entire site in 1 hour with LiDAR. In that same 1 hour, the surveyor was only able to capture one stockpile. Now, granted, yes, it was the biggest stockpile that was there. But if you look at the level of effort that it took to capture that one stockpile versus the level of effort that it took for me to capture the entire site and then provide them a accurate deliverable, and I'm talking a 2-centimeter accurate deliverable by the end of the working day, for them to then go the next day and say, oh, wait, we're $200,000 short of extra material that we did not account for. Who cares if it rained that day before? And actually, what's funny is it actually did rain that day before when I went and did that site. The level of effort to go and get that data again is a fraction of what it would take to do it the traditional way. Even if you're not, a centimeter accurate, right? Within doing dirt, you got to be a tenth, that's 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters.
This, I think, very much correlates to what we were discussing just before. Like, not every job is a survey job, okay? And this just confirms that there is oftentimes the speed beats perfection. So you don't really need like absolute accuracy. You just need it freaking fast.
Yep. Well, especially with the demands from the higher ups now. They want everything this fast.
That's why, for example, like EveryPoint app is doing great, because you can just pull out your iPhone and you can measure your stockpiles, right? So
yep,
this is really exactly the case. Who cares whether it's absolutely accurate? You just need like rough measurements of that.
Yeah.
Dylan, when we were discussing a few topics, you came up with the term KISS method.
Yes.
Does it correlate to what we were just speaking about? Like just picking the easiest way how to do it, like good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, literally. The KISS method, there's either two ways to go about it. Keep it simple, stupid, or keep it stupid, simple, right? Either works.
Keep it simple, you stupid.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I think sometimes we just get so wrapped up in all of the new technology, especially 3D Gaussian splatting, different LiDAR. I just literally saw a video last week of Ouster. They're announcing a new LiDAR that can also collect color data at the same time without an RGB camera. Wild, right? That I can't even wrap my head around that. But especially in my position, I know I get wrapped up in all the technology. Yes, I get access to all these cool tools all the time. But you got to also think about the everyday individual or the everyday company. They are still using tools that they've been using for the last 5, 10, 15 years. They keep it simple because if they start overcomplicating it, they're going to start falling behind on deadlines. They're going to have to build out new workflows, which you do have to do that. You have to evolve. I'm not saying you don't do that. But sometimes even just being as simple as possible for your end client is going to win you the job. Oftentimes I see some of my competitors in my region here, they like to overcomplicate what it is that they're doing and what it is that they're providing. I'll come and say, I'll just go scan the dirt for you and I'll just give you the output. They're like, it's just like that? Yeah, just like that. Keeping it simple. They like simple. They don't like overcomplicated because as soon as they feel overcomplicated, it becomes overwhelming. They're like, how much it's going to cost? And then it just keeps going down that rabbit hole. Now, there's certain instances where you can't keep it simple because it really is a complex problem that you're trying to solve. But even in the most complex situations, there's a simple method to approach. And I typically use the KISS method in almost every single project with almost every single client. And it's still working for me. And it's what I advise for a lot of my students to do whenever they get out into the industry.
Uh, I think people are overestimating the intelligence and the knowledge of their clients, and underestimating the strength of simplicity if you can deliver it. The other day, I was speaking to one of my partners, and they were asking whether they should be speaking with developers about digital twins, about the measurements of different sensors and IoTs and everything else regarding the laser scanning. And I was like, no, no, please don't. Just come with the easiest way. If they have like already built building, it's like office building, for example, and they
Right.
are renting their spaces. The easiest low hanging fruit is we can measure your office building and we can tell you whether you are renting more or less square meters than you actually have on your invoices, right?
Yep.
On your billings. That's like the easiest way how to use laser scanning for the first time with the building that is in operation right now. Don't overcomplicate things. Just go
No.
with the easiest one and with the most simple one.
It's so funny that you say that because I was literally in a conversation earlier this week, exact same conversation. Um, we have we have a lot of airports here in the United States. I'm not talking about big airports. I'm talking about a bunch of small municipal airports. And there's this one big company here that owns about 240 of these. They call them FBOs, so the big hangars where the private airplanes hang inside of. Um, they don't actually know the square footage of the hangars. They bought them. They have no idea, and they are a business that sells leases based off of the square footage of these hangars, and they have no idea. They're just throwing a number out that sounds good. And we have gone in and convinced them saying, hey, look, we can simply go in and within less than an hour, we can scan your 40,000 square foot hangar and get you an actual estimate of it, give you an LOD that is more than sufficient enough, a level of detail, level of design, depending on how you want to go about it, of a full as-built for the site. That way you can use it to understand what the actual square footage of the hangar is. And then you can bill per square footage for the hangar. Like, oh, that's simple? Yeah. And this is a company that has hundreds of millions of dollars of hangars all throughout the United States, over 240 of them. And they have no idea what the actual square footage is. They have a rough idea based off of what the previous owner told them, but there is no factual data to back it up with. There's no scan. You don't need a surveyor to go and give you a centimeter accurate, even though the tools that we're using are going to give us millimeter accurate.
Yeah.
But
But
it's
it's
a
not
simple
what you're
task.
selling. It's not what you're selling.
No, it's not. It's not what we're selling. We're solving a very simple problem for them, and we don't have to overcomplicate. Oh, we don't have to go in with a drone, do this. No, scan it, done. Send it to our BIM team, done. That's it.
This might be actually, I think, even though I don't want to position myself into this, but I think this is a good business tip as well. Like, don't try to oversell what you're doing and just to overcomplicate what you're selling. If you are on intro call or intro business meeting and you're trying to explain what your company is doing, just pick one simple thing that you can help the client with. Because once you're trying to explain 2, 3, 4, 5 different things,
It
you
goes.
lost them. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Goes over their
They
head.
are already thinking about their problems, not about your solutions.
Or they're thinking about, well, how do we integrate all this now?
Yeah, perfect. We have some comments. Could you please describe keys? Please elaborate. Yeah, we already mentioned that it's keep it simple, stupid, or keep it stupid, simple. Scott is saying that they were using this in army.
I
Keep
got
it
it from my
simple,
dad.
stupid.
My dad was in the military, so he taught me that one.
Yeah. Absolute accuracy is really hard to achieve, especially for a long-term assessment. I think this is also the case of what your client actually needs. Usually, people that don't understand what they need, they are usually asking about the accuracy and the best accuracy possible and whatever. Can you support this, or do you have any other experience?
Yeah,
Dylan?
I mean, for long-term projects, well, some of the long-term projects that I typically work on are for warehouses that are being built, and for the most part, they're just tracking the dirt. Now, they still have surveyors that go in on site, and they're still tying down to control and using their total stations to get that millimeter accuracy, because that does matter, right? That's the difference of a fire escape being, a few centimeters off and a few feet off, and that's a big violation. That's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars to fix. Where for dirt, as long as I'm still providing absolute accuracy to them, but in a sense, the initial data is relatively accurate to the site. Having all of these other methods of control, right? At the end of the day, control is the most important factor here. That's how you maintain long-term effectiveness of your data. Otherwise, if you're just relying on relatively accurate ways of delivering your data, you're going to see those shifts. Now, again, it always comes back to what is the purpose of your data? What problem is it solving? And you kind of work back from there, which again is why I also emphasize if a surveyor needs to be involved in a project, I'm going to get my surveyor buddies involved in the project, because I'm not going to sit there and pretend, oh, well, I can just do everything myself. No, absolutely not. There's a time and a place where I can provide even absolute accuracy without using a surveyor. Again, I can't guarantee that. And I have all of those disclaimers in my contracts with my client. But for the most part, once they actually kind of realize, oh, I don't really need absolute accuracy, relative is more than enough, especially on 300 acres of land. You don't need absolute accuracy on that in terms of, let's say, earthworks or just understanding what the land looks like.
Yeah.
During the design and build phase, yeah, that does matter.
You have like 20, 30 seconds. I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor of this episode, which is Nubigon. Guys, I've been working with the Nubigon for quite some time. It's software to just animate and render your 3D assets. So it doesn't really matter whether it's coming from LiDAR or terrestrial scanner, or it's a photogrammetry, or is it 3D Gaussian splatting. You can all put together, even beam or DTA models, whatever. You can put it all together and create nice animations and renders. The most important thing is that you have to understand that usually the one that is paying your bill is not the one working with your data. So if you want to wow your client and use your data as marketing, just render like 30 seconds video for your client and deliver it alongside the other deliverables, and you will win the next job right away. I guarantee. Nubigon.com. If you guys want a discount for that, I have some code, so reach out to me directly. Right at the beginning, we touched the company Skydio, and when I think of them, I always think about AI, even though it actually, at least from the beginning, it wasn't about AI at all. It was just like great algorithm that was able to like calculate the paths and everything, right, for the autonomous fly. Uh, is there already AI involved in Skydio?
Oh, yeah. Well, AI is actually kind of the forefront. It's actually really interesting, the history of
I
Skydio
want to
in a
speak about
sense.
AI and drones in
Yeah.
general, but this was something that I wanted to look back.
No, AI has actually been the forefront of the technology on Skydio. Skydio, they started out as a college project. It was like a capstone project where they were trying to figure out how do we create a programmatic way for vision to automatically detect obstacles and then find the least path of resistance. Basically, how do you traverse that without
Mhm.
hitting any objects? And it was an algorithm that they have built. And they're like, well, what can we put this on that moves in a three-dimensional space that isn't on wheels, that isn't underwater? Oh, drone. So they actually put it on a fixed wing drone, and they were flying through parking garages with all the columns and everything. That was their initial start into drones. They're basically a software company that bolted onto a drone, and they became a drone company. Which, I mean, that's kind of how a lot of these tools get built out, right? You got to find some kind of vehicle to put it on. Drones are cool and sexy. So yeah, no, AI has been the forefront for they were AI before AI was AI,
Mhm.
essentially, or before what
Mhm.
we think about AI, because AI has
Mhm.
been around for a very long time. This is not anything new. We're just in a rapidly progressing state of it that I didn't even think was even possible.
Are you using AI in any way with your
Every single day, every
commercial
single day.
jobs?
Yes.
How?
So there's a lot of um, there's a lot of repetitive tasks that I have built out for automation in terms of doing calculations, in terms of doing the actual data processing itself. They're going to spoil the secret sauce on my end, but I've built a few workflows that once I get the data, it's going to sort everything through for me. It's going to do some error calculation uh, based off of what surveyors give me, and then it'll do some basic processing for me. But we're starting to see. I mean, AI has been such a big buzzword since ChatGPT 3 came out, when everyone was able to get access to it. And now you're seeing every single company on the face of the earth, technology wise, even not technology wise, integrate AI, whether it's on a software front, whether it is on a hardware front, um, whether it's full autonomy. I've got friends that are building these crazy algorithms to do change detection on transmission and distribution lines through, I mean, it's mostly just vision, but it's still AI at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And it's rapidly progressing.
But you don't use it in terms of flying and planning of fly
Well,
paths.
more recently, I actually have been. So, funny enough, I've actually got this guy right here. So this is the Manifold 3. It's a I'm going to be simplify it here, oversimplify it here. It's an AI computer. It's just a computer that
Kiss.
bolts on. Yeah, it's a computer that bolts on to the Matrice 4 Enterprise from DJI, and it gives expanded capability. One of the, we'll call it, models that they integrated, or that they allow you to download and run onto the drone, is their Smart Explore feature. So let me kind of describe how this works. Let's say, and we'll just pretend that this is uh, the Matrice 4 Enterprise, and we're gonna bolt it on. And if I got some tape here, there we go. We'll tape them together, right? We'll just pretend that that's working. So ultimately, what's going to happen, let's say my microphone is what we're trying to do our scan of. Traditionally, I would have to manually fly around this and collect all the data. Now, what it can do, given that these drones also have additional cameras around for obstacle avoidance, it's going to use all 4 cameras plus the main camera and then just kind of fly around the environment, building a real-time point cloud with, and if you're using RTK, it's going to get you centimeter accurate position of that point cloud. It's going to generate that point cloud in real time and then process it into a model on that Manifold 3. Once it has that model, it's going to build an automated flight path based off of the parameters that you want. So what is your distance off of it? What is the resolution that you're trying to get, right? I can get all the way down to 6 millimeters of ground sampling distance or actual resolution of the model on there. And it's going to automatically build that flight path while keeping the entire physical model of the real world intact and understand where obstacles are to build that automated flight path. This is something that would have taken, actually a great example, this office building that I'm in right now. If I were to capture this by hand or even using some of these smart capture methods that fortunately the Matrice 4 Enterprise has built in, it would take me probably about 6 hours to do a thorough and detailed collection of the entire building and probably about 14,000 photos. In 1 hour and 20 minutes, including the time that it took for the drone to fly around the entire building by itself, I was able to do that and run an automated flight path and collect just about 6,000 photos that I think produced a one or like half a centimeter ground sampling distance model.
Mm-hmm.
All by itself. All I had to do was just babysit the drone to make sure it wasn't going to crash into anything, but it didn't because it knew where every single object was, which is just wild. And that's just one of the things that this thing can do. I actually have a call next week with another company that's building specific models to run on these drones to do object detection, whether it's animals, whether it's cracks on the asphalt, whether it is something with a transmission and distribution line, let's say a thermal heat signature that is throwing off a flag, right? There's so many different use cases that are starting to come out now. And granted, DJI is, not, I wouldn't call them at the forefront of integrating AI. There's actually a company here in the United States called Flyby Robotics. In fact, that 3-hour documentary that I posted last year, I went to their facility in California, and they are putting NVIDIA AI chips inside of their drones. And there's some really cool stuff that they showed me where they're doing full drone swarms that they're all talking to each other. And I can't really go much further than that, but they're doing some just wild things with these drones with real-time processing stuff that would have taken going out, collecting it, coming back into an office, processing, getting an output. They're doing all of it in real time. And we're just at the start of where AI is going in the space.
Let me get back for a bit to that autonomous flight for the 3D modeling. It must be the stupidest question to ask right now, but it's similar to taxi drivers and autonomous cars. Like,
Yep.
what's going to a drone pilot do in 2-3 years?
There's still going to be jobs here. There's a lot of highly technical skill sets that are required. And I'll give you a few examples. So in the transmission and distribution space, right? Actually, one of the things that we're still having to deal with is the Part 107 regulations. Here in the United States, you have to maintain visual line of sight unless you get a waiver to go beyond visual line of sight called BV loss, or you have to get a second person or a third person to be your visual observer, your VO, to watch over that drone. And with how things are here, at least in the United States, there's a lot of friction when it comes to just letting the drone do its own thing. Granted, there's companies here that are becoming successful in letting the drone do full automation, but there's still hiccups that happen, right? There's still anomalies that are going to come into play, such as a bird attacking the drone, or somebody shooting down the drone, or the drone having some kind of magnetic interference or an RF interference, right? There's all of these things that we think in a perfect world, AI is going to run everything. That's not going to be the case. You're still going to have a human to intervene when a problem arises. And maybe the skill level of a drone pilot is going to have to go up in order to maintain your job, which, I mean, we look at every single industry that has introduced automation, and we've seen that the skill level, in order for you to have that higher paying job or that higher level opportunity, it needs to go up. It can't just be a subsurface level of, I got my Mini 3, let me go make $100,000 doing nothing. That's
You
not the reality of it.
you probably cannot stay in a position of being an operator, and I think this is a
Partially,
cross
partially.
industry. Like it goes for every industry. I think like being just the operator of anything will not keep you the job. Like you have to be able to bring on some delivery, some like critical decision making in the future,
Yep.
and some other skills that you will have to bring to the table.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I'd love, or not, I would love, as much as some people would love to live in a world where computers just run everything. I don't want that. Like, I still want to have fun. I still want to fly my drone. But there's going to be a lot of very low effort jobs that are taken by automation. That's inevitable. That will always happen, no matter what industry you get into. So I think that's just a reality that people have to unfortunately accept, but it is a reality that's going to happen. And you're starting to see it. There's a lot of these newer dock operations. So drone lives in a dock and the drone will come to and from. But what about the one-offs, right? You're not going to put a drone dock in one place just for one operation. Drone docks are made for repetitive tasks, right? And that's where the automation is really going to come into play. If something is not a repetitive task, you're still going to have an operator go out. So, for example,
That might depend, because in case of fully autonomous capabilities of these docks, you can imagine that the robot will bring the dock on site, just pull it out of the car, put it out there, or keep it on a trunk and just let the drone do the autonomous shit on itself.
you know what? That absolutely is a possibility. But look, as much as just to give you some context here, Michael, the United States is pretty big here. You know, it takes me 9 hours to drive from one side of Florida all the way to the other. So, and we think about electric vehicles and autonomy and all these things. Great, right? That works fantastic in larger cities or when cities are very close to each other. But in the reality of things, especially if you look out in Texas, Texas is a massive state. I mean, if you throw Texas on Europe, I mean, it's pretty big. And if we're just going to rely on automation and robotics to go from station to station, eventually will that happen? Yes, but we're still at a crossroads when it comes to technology, right?
I
More like battery technology. We're at our
absolutely,
limits right now.
absolutely.
Is it
That
going to change? Sure, but
there
not
is a
right now.
there is a big difference between something being able to be done and something to actually being able to replace something else, right?
Yeah,
There is a huge gap
yeah.
between those two.
And there's always going to be friction that's met with it too, right?
I wanted to, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that there's always going to be friction that's met with it. As great as all this technology that exists today, and I have this conversation all the time with my peers, and I'm very entrenched into the AI world, not on the drone side, but just AI in general. I'm listening to every single podcast I can. I'm watching every single YouTube I can to learn about all the new tools, all the new things that are coming out. And there's all of these conspiracy theories like, oh my God, your jobs are going to be lost, this and that. And then I go back into the real world and I drive from my house to my office and people can't even drive their car. How are they even going to be able to use AI? I always
Yeah,
go back to that. It's like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. There's still a lot of opportunity that exists, and there's gonna be opportunity that exists indefinitely.
I wanted to ask regarding the AI, like maybe one last question,
Yeah.
because we already discussed like the capturing of the data and drone autonomous flights. I wanted to ask also about the outputs, like whether you're using some AI generated outputs or some AI automation, or I don't know, have you vibe coded something to help you with the outputs?
One thing I do want to make a clarification on, in terms of the wording, AI created deliverables. There, I actually got this comment the other day saying, "Oh, well, doing drone scans is going to be irrelevant because I can just type into my chat and have AI create that model for me." Absolutely, you can do that, but what about the real asset, right? What about tracking what's actually going on in that real asset? So, especially, let's say, transmission and distribution or a bridge. Yes, I can have ChatGPT create me a 3D model of a bridge, but what's that going to do for the actual bridge that has been there for 100 years that needs maintenance, that needs to be fixed, that needs to check the cracking? That AI model that I'm asking to generate is not going to solve that problem. So I do wanted to clarify that. But in terms of AI generated outputs, of leveraging AI, or we'll call them models, to help with the analytics and analysis of an actual object or asset to then get you the information that you need in a more streamlined way. Yes, I have actually been using that more recently. There's a new tool that I just started using called Pix Element. They have this AI stockpile. Realistically, it's just automatically drawing a bounding box on the stockpile for me. It's just looking at a height map to be able to generate that. So, and that's actually part of that KISS method, right? A lot of these AI models that are being built out, or AI automation, is using the most simplest way to extract data out of these, or create deliverables out of the data that we've already collected.
So they are basically just creating contour lines.
Mhm.
So you don't really need AI for that, right?
No, but that's what I'm
Softwares have been
saying.
doing this for years.
Exactly. That's what I laugh so much about. Oh, well, AI is doing this. It's like, well, actually, computers have been doing a lot of automation for us. We just never called it AI. We never have until AI became the big thing. And so we just slap AI onto everything, when in reality, it's just a procedure that it's running through. That's all.
That's true. Norman is asking. They are going to try to combine drone data with the ground scans. So what they should be aware of, and whether AI tools will eventually handle this alignment automatically. We have a good news for you, Norman. Dylan can start, and I will finish.
Yes. Well, the good thing is, if you have good control on site, then you can align your terrestrial and your aerial data together. And this has been done for a very, very long time. And that, I
I'm
mean,
not
that's the
sure
good thing.
Norman is asking about that. I think Norman is asking about the actual combination of laser scans with the photogrammetry data,
Oh, well,
and not
it's
not
the
only
different
about the
lasers, the different
alignment,
tools and everything. Yeah, I mean,
not only about the alignment, but actually using the pixels for geometry reconstruction. And so this, we have been doing this for years with reality capture, now called RealityScan, where you can actually upload, or you can take your laser scanning data. It needs to be structured data, so from terrestrial laser scanner, you can input them into RealityScan software. Then you can load your images from the site, and if you have done the good job, it should align all automatically. If not, you will have to use control points and manually just try to put things together. Then you can actually mesh them together, like the point cloud data from the laser scan. You can mesh with the photogrammetry calculations, and then you can use textures from photogrammetry on the 3D mesh model.
what about outside of RealityScan? Because I know how to do that method too, and I've done that for years with some of the terrestrial scans that I've done to mesh with my aerial capture. I mean, RealityScan is such a great tool, and it's free.
Uh, that's why I tried to like emphasize that if you want to use the photogrammetry data also for the geometry and for the mesh creation,
Got it.
because there are ways how you can take also like less data from LiDAR or whatever, then use photogrammetry just to create texture and reproject that texture on those data.
Yeah. What
But this way you are not actually combining data for the geometry creation.
What's your experience with processing all this through the 3D Gaussian splatting algorithms? Have you done aerial and terrestrial together in that algorithm yet, or no?
You mean like from pictures?
Well, from
So
pictures and also
not
laser
speaking
scans,
about the laser scans.
both together.
It does not really make sense because laser scans, you cannot really use those data for Gaussian splatting because they are too sparse.
Too sparse. Okay.
There is not enough data. You would need to take laser scan every 1 or 2 meters. It doesn't make sense.
Got it.
Even if in spaces where I was doing quite dense scanning positions, I was trying to export 360 images from like panorama pictures from the scanner, but it looked like shit. So I don't care about that. But we have done multiple jobs where we combined aerial pictures with ground pictures and just put all together in Gaussian splatting. That works perfect.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is an that is a technology that I think has been the most rapidly evolving tech, at least what I've seen in my time in this space. And if I feel like it's changing faster than just traditional photogrammetry and LiDAR outputs.
You're speaking about the Gaussian splatting.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, do you usually use LiDARs for your mapping projects, or
Depends.
is it a combination?
It really depends. I'd say actually now over the last 2 years, it's been probably 50-50 where I'll do LiDAR or I'll do mapping.
Okay.
Usually if I'm doing LiDAR, I'm also doing mapping at the same time. But yeah, it's for me. It's
So
been 50-50.
you have both sensors on as a payload on your drone.
Well, a
or
lot
do
of
you,
a lot
do
of
you
these
do it
LiDAR sensors
continuously?
actually have built-in cameras. So like this one here that I have from Inertial Labs, you can see there's an RGB camera here, and then the actual LiDAR itself.
Yeah.
So it does it at the same time for me.
So please tell me you first, how do you have implemented 3D Gaussian splatting into your deliverables?
I actually haven't yet for my clients. It's an area that I'm doing a lot of exploration right now. Funny enough, about 2 weeks ago, I posted a video using the anti-gravity A1, this guy right here.
Yeah.
And I was able to actually work with their team to produce a 3D Gaussian splat model of this water, like this pretty famous water tower that's here in my city. And at first I thought it was a gimmick. I was like, okay, I thought this was a gimmick. And until I saw the final output where we'll call it a 3.5-minute flight around this tower generated, I'm not going to call it a model because it's not a full model, but the 3D Gaussian splat, I was like, wow, that's actually kind of insane that I'm able to get that kind of perspective in 3.5 minutes of flight, where I've also at the same time have done a full photogrammetry scan of that. And it took me 45 minutes and almost 3,000 photos. Now, granted, the output of the model beats the Gaussian splat because I'm using almost 3,000 20 megapixel images versus, we'll call it 3.5 minutes of two, spherical cameras. There's obviously going to be more fidelity in those single images versus what I get out of this. But it goes back to that level of effort. What is the purpose of me generating that model? Am I just doing it to document an asset? Okay, maybe a 3D Gaussian splat is the best way to do it. Or am I doing any kind of maintenance, or am I doing an inspection? Okay, then photogrammetry is the way to go because I need to be able to see that detail. I need to be able to see the cracks and actually do measurements. So that's kind of where I've been experimenting right now with 3D Gaussian splat.
That's quite easy question because what you need, what do you need to focus on? Do you need accurate geometry?
Yep.
Go with the photogrammetry. Do you need accurate visuals? Go with the 3D Gaussian splatting. Once you are doing the photogrammetry project and you are taking 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 pictures, the easiest way is to use the very same dataset on a 3D Gaussian splatting software. Just to process it one more time, you have 2 layers, you have 2 different outputs, and you can use them wherever and however they are needed to be used.
Well, it also depends on what the clients, if they just need me to go out and document it so that they know that it exists and it's there, then I'll just use a Gaussian splat because they're not doing any measurements. They just need to know that it exists and they just need to see it. But if they're doing measurements, then yeah, photogrammetry all day long.
Yeah, because 3D Gaussian splatting is not meant for measurements. Like the principle
Apparently
is
not
very
yet.
different.
Apparently it's changing. That's what I've heard. There's some new algorithms that are coming out, but we'll see. It's not there yet.
The thing is that very easily, the basic principle is that with the 3D Gaussian splatting, you are placing 3D blobs or 3D objects in the space, and they don't care about the surface, about the edges, about the corners. It's just placed in the space, and where it's very dense, then the geometry appears. Where it's very sparse, then there is just the free space. Uh, the thing is that instead of blobs, you can use basically any geometry for these splats, for these
Right.
Gaussians. Okay. Uh, the things you are speaking about is that people are trying to use like triangles instead of blobs. They're trying to use different other shapes, and yes, probably continuously we will be getting more and more accurate measurements on Gaussian splats as well. For me personally, I think this is something that we should not be running for, because you will be doing some visual compromises with this. Okay, and the 3D Gaussian splatting is perfect because it's brilliantly visually accurate. Like
Yes.
the main goal is to get as good reproduction, visual reproduction of the space or the object as possible. If you need accuracy, just do the laser scanning or do the photogrammetry. Why do you want to replace one with another?
No, I mean, I do see that. But I think to counter, as we continue to evolve with the technology and we can have more efficient means of data collection, and then if we're able to embed high accuracy with it in terms of compressing it down, again, going back to that level of effort, I think it's a win-win across the industry. Now, is it a replacement? No, not at all. Do I favor 3D Gaussian splats in certain instances where I want a visually accurate representation of the environment? Absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest use case is the reproduction of water surfaces and reflected glass. Those two right there break every single time in photogrammetry. But then when you look at a 3D Gaussian splat, it's like, oh wow. And you kind of move around in the model and it shows that same reflection. I'm like, that looks awesome. That's a more presentable, call it a model, I'm using quotation marks here, of a data set or of an asset or of an environment than using photogrammetry, because the trees looked intact, the glass, the water, all of that looks visually pleasing.
That's the goal.
Yes.
Like this the main feature of the Gaussian splatting.
Yep.
It's not about the accuracy. And once again, even if with the development and great coding and with help of AI, even if we get like good enough geometry, like
Right.
why should do this if we already have photogrammetry which can achieve sub-millimeter accuracy if right tools are used, right, and the
Right.
right control?
Right.
Why would we need to develop other way how to reconstruct the same shit, right?
Right.
Right now that there is a clear importance for 3D Gaussian splatting in terms of visuals. Why bother with the geometrical accuracy?
Right.
But maybe that's a discussion for
Another time.
another day.
Yes.
But I wanted to get back to why are you not using it yet with your clients? Because I don't think you should be like selling it, the 3D Gaussian splatting, but at least just like try the waters. Just
Yeah, I'm doing some experimenting with it. I actually was having a whole conversation yesterday with a engineering firm, and I get into rabbit holes with them all the time. And they're now starting to test out Gaussian splats. I said, hey, I've actually got some access to tools, Insta360. They're actually going to be sending me some more cameras to do some testing with, because there's actually been a huge interest from my audience to learn more about it and dive deeper into the Gaussian splat world. And so I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to do that. And then the discussion that I started having with this engineering firm is they actually want to start using Gaussian splats for their walkthroughs on their sites, because they're getting sick and tired of just using the 360 camera just from place to place to place. And they want to be able to have a more fluid
Yeah.
walkthrough of these environments, but also track it over time, have an archived history that they can go back and forward just to see where things were. They're not doing measurements, they just need a visual documentation. And I see that as actually a huge benefit for that. Now, an industry that I think would greatly benefit from 3D Gaussian splats is also the real estate world. That's actually the industry that my parents primarily work in for almost 2 decades. And so I'm actually starting to have some discussions with them on how, hey, rather than using something like a Matterport, right? Everyone knows what Matterport is, or at least is aware of what Matterport's outputs look like. It's that circle on the ground that you click to go see that 360, but it visually doesn't look that good, in my opinion. It was good for the time when it came out, but they have not evolved to where the technology is today. And
Totally agree. Yeah.
I think where we're headed with companies like XGrids, with companies like Insta360 that are developing these cameras or these tools, scanners to collect this kind of specific geospatial data, and then having these new advanced algorithms for 3D Gaussian splat, I think is going to open up a new world in opportunities for visually displaying assets or environments that commonly would not have been able to be achieved with just simple 360 photos or walkthroughs, I should say.
Yeah, let's see. I agree with you about the Matterport not being too evolved. I have heard some rumors about they being into Gaussian splatting and exploring this space. I think the biggest problem they have is with the quality of the output data, because if they want to rely only on the stationary images from the Matterport cameras, while so far they were doing their best for the least amount of position to create good enough model,
Mhm.
you know, you will not have enough pictures and enough overlap for to be able to produce a nice and pleasing 3D Gaussian splatting from that.
Right.
So this is probably something that they are struggling with. That would be just my guess.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I wanted to touch, because we already mentioned the LiDAR, and that you are doing LiDAR maybe 50% of the time. Where do you see the development of this? Is it going to be more accurate, or is it going to be like, what's the future of LiDAR scanning with the drone?
Yeah, that's actually something I'm going through. I I was gonna rush it out, but then I decided not to because it would have done a big um, disservice to the involvement in LiDAR. But I'll explain what I mean here. Uh, I started working on this research and development project to compare all of these different LiDAR sensors, not against each other, just in general, of what their capabilities are, what their accuracies are at different output or different altitudes, different parameters, to really see, right, what is the value that you're able to extract out of the money that you're investing into a sensor. So for example, this sensor that I have right here, this is about a $35,000 sensor, LiDAR sensor. Now DJI, they have their, we'll call it their $18,000 LiDAR sensor that they just came out with not too long ago called the L3. Wouldn't the $35,000 one be better and more accurate? No, but also yes, right? So that's a very confusing answer that I'm giving here. And it has to come down to a lot of different factors. One, what kind of laser is it using? That new L3 is using that 1535 or 1550 nanometer wave, where this XT32 that I have from Inertia Labs, or really from Recipe, no, not Recipe. Who's it? Who makes it? Hesai, sorry, Hesai that makes the LiDAR sensor, right? There, it's either a 905 or an 835 nanometer wave, or an 805, right? These are different kinds of lasers that are being used in these scanners. And what we have
Can you?
seen,
So sorry. Can you tell the audience, like, what does it mean if they have different wavelengths? What does it actually mean for the outputs?
oh, no, that's exactly what I was going to get into, right?
Sorry.
All of these different sensors, if you look all the way back from where we came from, when not aerial LiDAR from manned aviation, but aerial LiDAR in the introduction to drones. So think of companies like Regal and Phoenix that were putting out those sensors that cost $250,000 US. That was such a huge barrier to entry, but also it was a relatively sparse point cloud that was being generated, not that many returns, meaning like how frequent the lasers are coming back to the sensor. They were accurate, but they were not as high accurate. You had to fly them low, you had to fly them slow, they were clunky, you could only fly them for 12 to 15 minutes, where now as we have gone up or evolved in the technology to something like the L3, I could fly that, if I were to get the legal requirements to do that, 900 meters in the air and still get 3 centimeters of accuracy. Where with those other Regal sensors that cost you $250,000, your sweet spot was 160 feet, or what's that, about 50 something, 55 meters above the ground. That right there is a huge factor in terms of speed, the cost of operation, and the effective data, right? The accuracy that you're getting out of these sensors. So to kind of go back, right? Why would you get a 1550 nanometer wave LiDAR sensor versus an 805? Different kinds of penetration, different kinds of accuracy, different kinds of capability that you can do at different altitudes, different speeds, different parameters. And what we've seen is it evolve from 250,000 US dollars all the way down to about 20,000 US dollars. And that 20,000 US dollar sensor is outperforming that $250,000 sensor by a factor of like 25 to 1, which is insane.
This is giving very different perspective on my next question, because I wanted to ask you, like, how would you compare and where would you draw the line between using on a drone a LiDAR, airborne LiDAR, compared to those SLAM solutions that you can actually put as a payload under the drone and using them airborne?
Yeah.
But these SLAM solutions their costs are going like 30,000 plus, right? And now you're mentioning the LiDAR system that is actually around 20K.
Yeah. And I'll be a little bit more realistic. Yes, it only works on DJI. So if you wanted something a little bit more comparable, you would spend probably about 40,000 US dollars for a comparable sensor that you can put onto any drone, because a drone is just a vehicle.
Still in a very similar, very similar price tag. Yeah.
So I still think there's quite a ways for these hybrid SLAM / aerial LiDAR sensors to go. One of the biggest problems with SLAM is drifting. That happens over a longer period of time. Now, granted, that's more of the algorithms at play, not necessarily the sensor, right? All of these SLAM scanners are using a Hesai LiDAR for the most part. It comes down to the algorithms, and every single one of these sensors have different algorithms that they go through for processing. Now, when you're doing airborne LiDAR, you already have some kind of known position. That's why they have the GNSS receiver on it. That's why they don't need to run through a SLAM algorithm to figure out what was captured. When you get into that hybrid approach, you're trying to basically use a Swiss Army knife to solve a bunch of problems, rather than using a tool that's intended for one purpose and one purpose only. No, I'm not saying that things aren't going to change over time, but to kind of answer your question, why wouldn't I just use an Emesent scanner over, let's say, the L3? Right. Well,
but to be clear, not for mapping. Okay, we're not speaking like large scale mapping.
Okay, well, that's what I was going to go towards. If it's large scale, I'd much rather use a purpose-built LiDAR scanner, specifically one of these long-range LiDAR systems, which that's what the L3 is marketed as. CHC Navigation also has long-range LiDAR systems that you can be 900 meters up in the air and get that few centimeters of accuracy. That actually helped me big time on a massive project that I worked out in the Midwest. 700 acres that I captured in 57 minutes and had 2 centimeter accuracy. I would not have been able to do that with that other sensor that I have next to me. That would have taken me 5 hours of data collection. That's where that kind of comes into. Again, it goes back to that level of effort. What's the level of effort that it's going to take for you to capture all of that data? And that's how you start measuring all these scanners and sensors. And as we continue to evolve with the technology, it gets cheaper, faster, better, more accurate. And that theme is going to continue on. And that's what we're kind of seeing with aerial LiDAR. It's starting to get cheaper, smaller, faster, better.
At the beginning, we were doing the poll about how many people are using the drones in the day-to-day jobs, and 2/3 are already using drones. 1/3 was not using drones. So in the next few minutes, I wanted to discuss like the low-hanging fruit or the easiest way how to enter the market, or as you mentioned earlier, like how to make big money with small drone, or just give me the simplest way how people could start with the
Yep.
doing models with from drones.
Look, I think it goes back down to that KISS method that I was talking about at the beginning. You don't have to go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars in gear to be able to compete at the highest level, because reality, you're not going to be competing at the highest level yet. You got to use these opportunities as stepping stones. And what I mean by opportunities is involving yourself and putting yourself out there. As simple as approaching somebody in real estate, right? Using your existing contacts and relationships. Theoretically, I can use this Mini 3 to do an inspection with, right? It doesn't need to be positionally accurate with using technology like RTK, but maybe it's just a roof inspection. Right there, that's a $150 job that you can work with a roof contractor. It saves them from having to go up on the roof and walk the whole thing. You can go and do spot checks with them. Or maybe you're doing some marketing, right? Again, a drone as simple as a Mini 3 can get that done. Or hey, maybe somebody just wants to understand what a small plot of land looks like. Again, you can use a Mini 3 to automate collecting the photos in a systematic way and running it through an application like WebODM or even RealityScan, because they're both free, and you can generate a 2D output. It's going to be relatively accurate, not absolute, but maybe that person doesn't care. Maybe they just want a simple map of their property. You don't have to go super complicated. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole of, all right, I need this GNSS receiver, I need this RTK, I need this thing, this, and no. Get comfortable with it, and also involve yourself in conversations that's going to encourage, I don't want to call it innovation, but just having interesting conversations with individuals. Like, one of the biggest advices that I give to people that are just getting started, if they don't know where to go to those town hall meetings. And this is more of like the construction approach, right? Go to the town hall meetings and understand, hey, what permits are being pulled for this new commercial development that's about to happen. The people that are going to be at those conversations are the developers themselves. Those developers need to have insight on their properties, even if it's as simple as just some photos and videos. You start there, you use it as a stepping stone, right? You get your foot in the door, you start providing them an asset that they like. Hey, have you thought about, I see all this dirt coming in out of site. How are you guys measuring that? How are you guys validating that the contractor is actually providing, accurate results? Oh, well, he just says that he is. Would you mind seeing this scan that I did for you? Right? Providing as much value as you can, but also understanding how these certain industries can leverage the technology. You can't go in to a roof inspection and say, hey, I'm going to throw LiDAR on this because LiDAR. No. Or go and scan a stockpile with thermal because the colors look cool. No, you got to do some due diligence as well. You got to understand the industries that you're trying to sell to, because at the end of the day, you're providing a service. And if that service doesn't solve a problem or doesn't provide some kind of ROI, remember, ROI doesn't always have to mean money, then the service that you're providing is completely useless to that end client.
It's important to say that buying any gadget is the easiest thing to do on the whole business you are going to do.
Everybody has a credit card that they can use to go spin it and put it on there.
Yes, exactly. There is a whole bunch of procedures and skills and knowledge that you have to learn or gain or buy or have to be able to do this business. And buying the most expensive drone is not the most important one, not in the list, I think.
I agree.
Even. Just to be aware that if you want to start with simple photogrammetry, with simple scanning with the drones, even the least expensive drone, the most cheapest one, which actually have the camera, can be used for photogrammetry.
Yeah.
The same way how you can use your smartphone for doing a ground photogrammetry, it's the very same. So just to enter the industry, just to be able to do your first model, just use whatever you have right next to you, and the easiest, cheapest way.
I agree. And that's what I told everybody. You don't have to start with the latest and greatest in technology. There's people that still ask me, hey, I have a Phantom 4 Pro, which you can kind of see it up in the corner. If I can point right over here. Wait, over there. Yeah, there we go. That drone is still fantastic to use. Still 20 megapixel camera. It can still provide reliable results. You just got to start somewhere.
Dylan, I wanted to ask you one last question, because beside the fact that you are an entrepreneur, you are doing great jobs, you are influencer, you are creating a lot of content on a YouTube. You have almost 140k subscribers on YouTube. Guys, subscribe to Dylan. He's doing amazing content. You also are doing educational, or how would you call it? Like, you have a Pilotbyte company that is also teaching people how to do the shit, right?
Yes. Yeah. So Pilotbyte is primarily a training, education, and consulting company. So we work with companies all over the world, and companies can be even just one person, right? So individuals that are looking to get into the space, companies that are looking to leverage the technology. I do everything that I can to provide all the tools and resources, whether it's through my YouTube or through my platform Pilotbyte, through courses, through online training, through in-person training. I actually have an entire facility that I do it all at for both mapping, LiDAR, and we're even expanding beyond that to give a good foundation on what this technology is and what this technology can do and provide as a reliable deliverable, or just a reliable service to clients. Now, a lot of people ask me, like, why are you training your competition? I'm not, honestly. I actually collaborate with a lot of the people that I work with, and this industry is built on a lot of relationships, or building strong relationships, building reputable individuals that you can rely on, alongside with a reputation that you can deliver what it is that you're saying that you're delivering. But also, for me, it's helping set a proper foundation for the right tools, the right assets, the right approach, the right workflows to deliver consistent, reliable data. Because I think, like what we talked about at the beginning of this, anybody can go out and buy a drone and just say, hey, I can do a model. Okay. And that's where I think education is very important. Not in my own bias of, okay, yes, that's where I make my living of educating, but educating the masses as best as I can, alongside not just me, but my other, we'll call them competitors, like Pilot Institute, Drone Launch Academy, UAV Coach, right? They're also colleagues of mine that also do education. And our goal is to make sure that people are doing things the right way, the legal way, and not putting out misinformation of what a tool or a software can and can't do, because at the end of the day, that hurts us, that hurts the industries, that hurts people like you and me that are trying to go and sell this service or provide some kind of ROI to a client. So that's why I have built and continue to run Pilotbyte for the last 4 years now.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your experience. Thank you for coming to this live event. I wish you good luck. Good luck with your projects. You said that you have a lot to do in next few months, so
I do.
just wish you all the best. And again, thank you for coming here. Thank you guys for watching this, for spending with us 100 minutes. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day.